What's going on, my St. Louis City fam? I'm your girl Kelly, here to give you the rundown on what happened in St. Louis City government this week, and here's what you need to know. So first, yes, I have an update for y'all regarding the American Rescue Plan Act, aka ARPA, funding in the city of St. Louis. So if y'all remember last week, I spoke about the Board of Aldermen, specifically the Housing, Urban Development, and Zoning, aka the HUD's committee, moving forward with the process of deciding how the city's gonna spend its second installment in ARPA funding, right? I told y'all that last week. Apparently there's been a change in plans. Alderman Jeffrey Boyd, who serves as the head of the chair of the committee, he expressed that they were gonna put a pause on that for now. However, they would be discussing and trying to pass out of the committee and hopefully get it fully passed by the Board of Aldermen how to spend the remaining roughly $40 million of the first installment of ARPA coin that the city of St. Louis has. So fast forward to the HUD's committee meeting on Thursday. The Board of Aldermen President Louis Reed, he was there presenting his tweaks and his amendments to this legislation, appropriating how this remaining, again, roughly $40 million will be spent. So his language that he presented, it would appropriate $37 million to the St. Louis Development Corporation, aka the SLDC, and the SLDC will use that coin to provide and manage grants within the North City commercial corridors to stabilize and expand small businesses and nonprofits, add providers of needed services to neighborhoods, as well as cover a percentage of costs for businesses or community enhancement projects. So how would this $37 million be spent, right? So here's the breakdown, y'all. So $9.6 million will go to the Dr. Martin Luther King corridor. $5.7 million will go to the Natural Bridge corridor. $5.5 million will go to the West Florissant corridor. $5 million to the North Grand corridor. $4.5 million will go to the Union corridor. $1.3 million will go to the Del Mar East corridor. $1.2 million will go to the Florissant Avenue corridor. $1.1 million will go to the Del Mar West corridor. $1.1 million will also go to the Goodfellow corridor. $825,000 would go to support area-wide benefits, projects, planning, marketing, and consulting. $600,000 will go to the North Broadway corridor, and $500,000 will go to the Page corridor. So if this sounds familiar, yes, it is familiar, because if you recall, when the Board of Aldermen were deciding on how to spend its first installment way back in the summertime, whenever that was, there was a piece of their proposal in the legislation that appropriated $30-something million that will go towards economic development in North City corridors. However, the mayor, Tashara Jones, she vetoed it, she mutomboed it, saying that as it was written, it didn't comply with the Fed's regulations on how ARPA coin can be spent, because there are ways that local governments can and can't spend this coin. And so, she vetoed it. However, something that Brother Louis Reed mentioned on Thursday was that there's been some changes in the feds and their rules, the stipulations on how this federal funding could be spent, and it's expanded it a bit. So he's saying now with the changes in the rules, this definitely fits within that criteria. So what was the final verdict? It passed out of the committee with a do pass recommendation, and it will head to the full Board of Aldermen for their full approval. The second thing you need to know is that there is a pause placed on a bill until a conversation takes place with Washington University and BJC to include the North Side. So this occurred during the Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee meeting. Alderwoman Peel discussed her bill requesting the air rights needed above a portion of Newstead to build a pedestrian bridge. And the petitioners for this request are WashU and St. Louis Children's Hospital. So to be honest, I didn't pay no mind, because I'm like, WashU, a hospital, it's gonna happen. But I started listening after I heard this exchange.
I'm a proud graduate of WashU School of Law, but feel like that I see all that building over there, and I was taught at WashU School of Law, and I hear from the deans and things that should be spread around the community, but I don't see you all doing anything like that. I actually know a young man who works for you. He used to work on my campaign, Stephen who is the head of diversity, Stephen Player. I've been knowing him since he's been a kid. And I called and reached out to him about, hey, why don't you guys have some stuff in North St. Louis? So now I'm going to put you kind of on the hot spot here to say, I see all this building and all of what's going on, but I don't see any kind of follow-up of what I was told that was promised to the caucus back in 11 or 12. And I just want to ask you, gentlemen, how do you make these decisions? And do you ever look at the fairness of having a whole part of the city that you're not even involved in and you just don't do anything with? And I just think it's wrong. And I've treated you really nice when you came the last time, but got some harder questions this time. Who makes those decisions and who do I sit down and talk to? Because when I come here, I represent North St. Louis. And so when I don't see my community being respected, then I have some real hard times doing and respecting and supporting the things that you want to do.
Well, Chairwoman Tyus, I mean, I appreciate, hearing your concerns. I mean, I'll just have to be, upfront and honest with you. I wasn't involved with the conversations you're referencing. I don't recall those conversations.
Oh, okay.
Or at least that wasn't within my sphere. And certainly, whenever we talk about particularly clinical services, I mean, those are things we do in partnership with our hospital system at VJC Healthcare. I know there's been, attempts to build capacity at Christian Hospital, which I know is not North St. Louis, but but when it comes to specific commitments in North St. Louis, I apologize, but I wasn't involved with that, and I don't know what might have been discussed, and we certainly would be willing to sit down with you and with BJC and try to get a better understanding of what those opportunities might look like. But those sort of decisions are things that we make with our hospital partners, and would need to be, I think, part of that conversation as well.
So I don't mean to really put you on the spot, but I'm on the spot to deliver resources to my community. And I find that people don't tend to hear what you're saying or don't tend to follow up or drive through and say, hey, this is unfair in North St. Louis, until you get to a spot where you can make them understand that it's to their advantage to be able to be inclusive. And so right now, I'm not inclined. I came here preparing to vote no on this bill and kill it. I don't really want to do that. What I want to do is have a conversation with you, okay? And I want to have a conversation with the people who are in the right spot. And also, I'm not sure about what you're talking about. And usually I have things in my head. So I want to go out and see this and continue this bill until next week. But I would like to have conversations with WashU about how does that look that a whole part of town doesn't have something. And I'm having that same conversation with the hardware store people. I was here when they built the hardware store, the Home Depot on South Kings Highway. I was so proud. I lived in North St. Louis by that time, but I was proud. But I don't understand this exclusion of a group, a whole part of town, when especially you have so many resources. And I'm privileged to go to your part of Washington University. I'm privileged. I got a good education. And my education tells me to put this to the use right now to say, we need to have some conversations about, if we're going to keep coming here and doing all this stuff for you, what do you do for North St. Louis? Okay. So I'm not going to kill the bill. We're not going to vote against it, but I am going to hold it. I would like to spend this next week. I'm going to have another meeting next week. I would like to have this conversation with people and I will talk to who was the chair of the caucus at that time. And I'd like to start a conversation about what we can do in North St. Louis and not just act like we don't exist, because we do.
So y'all, Alderwoman Tyus is not one to let up on anything. So I'll be sure to keep y'all posted on what happens with this. The third thing y'all need to know. So yes, the special use district for NGA was discussed at length during one of this week's HUD's, so Housing Urban Development Zoning Committee meeting. So Alderman Bosley has been working on this legislation for hellas, y'all, because he's just been trying to get this legislation together and this special use district together, right? So what would this special use district consist of? So it would prohibit certain uses surrounding a 2,500 feet perimeter of NGA at Jefferson Cass that will, quote, impede communications, endanger NGA operations, and pose a threat to NGA's mission, unquote. So what uses would be prohibited? So here's some examples. Structures taller than 600 feet above mean sea level. So my understanding is that pretty much any building that's taller than NGA. Construction of gas stations, facilities or improvements financed, owned, sponsored, or operated by governments that the U.S. government ain't checking for, or which pose a threat to national security. Structures for the transmission or receipt of information and signals by or through electronic, radio, satellite, or some other means. Manufacturing of heavy machinery and power substations. So again, the purpose of the special use district is to ensure NGA can do what it's supposed to do, which is provide national security 24/7, 365, point blank, period. So it was clear during this lengthy discussion why this legislation took so damn long to come together. So first, there's been a lot of community engagement. So Alderman Bosley mentioned the St. Louis Development Corporation, SLDC, working through their entity, Project Connect, which has engaged residents, business owners, pretty much any community stakeholder for years about everything related to NGA, including the development of the special use district. And so it seems that the community understands its purpose and that they're good with it. So another reason why this legislation has taken so long, the developer in that area, Northside Regeneration, they ain't checking for these restrictions. They express that the city is giving up its power basically by allowing NGA to call the shots with these uses. They also have beef with the height restrictions. They feel like this may impact long-term development in the area, and they're like, hell, it's holding up some of our current projects. And y'all know time is money when we talking about development. Also, they said these negotiations, they ain't been helping us at all. So Alderman Bosley, he responded to that, agreeing that obviously everybody ain't gonna be 100% happy, right? And that there's no such thing as a perfect bill. However, there are things called amendments where you can change stuff. And he's like, look, I've asked y'all Northside Regeneration specifically, what do y'all want? And he said, all y'all keep telling me is, we don't like these stipulations. We don't like these restrictions. And he's like, I can't do nothing with that. I need specifics. Give me some numbers. Give me something. Because I can't work with what y'all give me right now. So, what was the final verdict? The bill, it passed out of the committee with a due pass recommendation and will head to the full board of aldermen for their full approval. So I'm rounding it out, y'all, with the legislative corner. So there were several bills passed that I want to highlight just so people are aware. So remember the bill I spoke about weeks ago that will make folks run the city back its coins if they were trained and didn't serve as a city police officer for at least 4 years? Well, that bill was finally passed this week. Also, there was a bill passed allowing the voters to decide to change the charter that would increase the fine from $500 to $1,000 for folks caught illegally dumping in the city of St. Louis. Also, the bill was passed establishing the creation of the reparations and the Midwest Land Development Funds, whose purposes are to support Black St. Louisans who have been victims of slavery. And the bill that was fast-tracked last week, making water, low-fat milk, and 100% fruit juice the default beverage option offered with kids' meals at restaurants, it was finally passed. So that's all I have for you as a heads up. Usually around this time of year, this is the end of the Board of Aldermen season, or session, which means that they reconvene in mid-April. However, there's still hella legislation pending, so they'll hold some special sessions and some special meetings. So y'all will see me before April. But until then, stay well out there. Take care. Peace.